The April 7th Ways and Means meeting. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty.
with liberty and justice for all.
Let me get the legalese out of the way. This meeting is being held in full accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, specifically Chapter 30, Section 20. If you are watching on BCAT and wish to join, you may get the link from the town's calendar on their website for today's date for Ways and Means, or you can join by phone. The number is 408-418-9388, and the phone number is the access code is 179-853-9460. So I was informed by Brad that Terry McSweeney from the Board of Health passed away on Monday evening or on Monday. So could we please take a moment to have a moment of silence to remember Terry? Thank you. So I sent out the list of warrant articles, and I need to take a few moments this weekend to look at the calendar and see specifically where we're at. The list of warrant articles is not yet finalized. The Board of Selectmen or the Select Board needs to vote on them, which is going to happen on Monday night, so there may be some changes, but the list is likely to be fairly final at this point. So those committees can start at least reaching out to their respective departments and get started. Taking a look, is there any public participation? Not seeing any, we'll move on. So we'll start with budget reviews, town assessor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Town assessor number 141 in the book, 416,779 for an increase of 1.1%. If we look at the reduction that was made in this budget in last fall, the change would have been a minus 3.57%. There have been some significant changes in this department, and Frank and I met with both Jim individually and then also with the administration. In September 2020, Jim Doherty retired from the town from his position. Not wanting to leave the town without this very critical position during a very critical time, the town entered into an agreement where Jim would work on a contract basis until the end of 2023 or the end of 2022. Yes, 2022. This means it'd be in place to set the tax rates for this coming fall for the 2022 tax rate, and also be there for the 2023 tax rates in the fall of 2022. The Board of Assessors and the town administration will commence a search for the town assessor. Nothing has been slated or scheduled as of yet because of, again, the time that Jim has opened up for staying with us. That period of time. It's going to be obviously a very difficult position to fill. We've been fortunate enough to have Jim for a number of years in West Washburn before. Town of Burlington, unique from a standpoint of a lot of, residential, but also the commercial base. So getting the right person is super critical in this area. And it will take some time, but that process has yet to begin. So you'll see from the from this year's budget that Jim's contract with the town, which is some reduced hours, has been fully funded, and it is not anticipated that there'll be any overlap for this fiscal year, meaning 2022, that would mean that we would have to increase that number. So the number you see for the assessor, or for the assessor with Jim's, is his contract for this coming year. If for some reason a new assessor was found, and we decided to get him started at whatever point we find him, and it was during the 2022 year, we would have to make arrangements through whatever process to fund that position, because right now the budget just only includes Jim's contract with the. Other than that, it's straightforward, except for really one line item, which is under contracted services. This is in regard to the deed and appellate tax board support. Again, in the past, for what I'll term the routine ones, Jim, very experienced and knowledgeable in this, and part of his ongoing employment, handles most of these on his own, and we don't need any outside contracted services for those. Generally, on some of the larger ones, like the Macy's ones that we've talked about before, a warrant article is specifically extended for defense of those cases, but the general run-of-the-mill ones have always been handled in effect by Jim. So we've added a $20,000 line item in that year, anticipating that because of COVID and what's transpired over the last year, we may need some outside services for this. And the placeholder that was put in was 1,000. Other than that, there most likely will be a warrant for the defense of the Macy's appeal. I have not seen the warrant as of yet, so I don't have a specific number there, but anticipate. Frank and I both supported this budget 2-0.
Thanks, David. Jim, would you like to add to David's report?
Just one thing for any of the old timers still around. We don't want to forget about Steve Gasparoni, your first full-time assessor prior to Russ. Going back, I happen to have the pleasure of knowing both gentlemen, fine individuals. Other than that, I think David did a great job, not to be disingenuous, doing the presentation. And I don't see Frank on here, but maybe he called in or I just don't see his name. But
Yeah, Frank said he was unavailable tonight because he was still recuperating from his with his leg.
Surgery. Oh, great. Good. I hope it went positive. I just wanted to say, and in typical fashion, Frank is never at a loss for questions. So we had a very vibrant discussion in the best sense of the description in our subcommittee meeting. So I'm really more here for any of you individuals who have particular questions I can help you with.
Thanks. I'll open it up to the committee. Does the committee have any questions? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, Jim, sorry to see you go, but glad to see you're not going. So appreciate you sticking on. I'm curious about the hiring process, and maybe this is for Joanne Faust, I'm not sure. Do we actively recruit, or is this do we just put an ad out there, so to speak, and hope people sign up, or are we actively recruiting to get a replacement? Do you happen to know that, or?
Sure. The Board of Assessors, in conjunction with the administration, worked collaboratively when they selected me to join the town about a decade ago. I have no reason to believe the same individuals would be involved. Actually, I'm remiss at the time, Paul Segarino was involved as the town accountant, so they probably planned. They knew the succession plan. He was gonna be around, so they wanted him involved as well. So I would suspect a similar plan like that would happen. I do know that Paul, and the chair of my board, has discussed that. Both David and Frank, we've discussed it probably over 18 months ago, actually almost 2 years ago now, about what the plans are and how that would roll out, and things like that. Look, we're all replaceable in life. I don't think anybody on this WebEx call believes otherwise, but unfortunately, and it's not just in assessing, you probably saw the same as it related to the treasurer collector position, as well as other positions in the town I'm probably not aware of right now. But certainly I can tell you in other communities, they're experiencing the same thing. The depth on the bench, quite frankly, just isn't there, largely because a lot of people don't wake up, young kids don't wake up in the morning and say, I want to be an assessor. And
They don't realize how much fun you're having, Jim.
Exactly.
I keep trying to tell my son that's exactly what he wants to do, but he keeps giving me a evil grin back. No.
It gives you tough skin if you do a lot of years at it, so it's actually good that way. But anyhow, to be very serious about it, and answer your question directly, is it's really both. So one is there will be a recruitment effort, and two, I'm sure in conjunction with HR and the other individuals I mentioned, they go to trade journals as well. The Mass Association of Assessing Offices, the MAA, Mass Municipal Association, government finance officials. So there's a couple of different areas like that. And then, of course, the other similar profession outside specifically assessing is valuation, which is really the core of what you want. You want someone with particularly, as David alluded to, with the concentration of commercial and industrial property you have in the community. You want someone with a solid background in commercial industrial valuation. It's easier to learn the jurisdictional issues of being an assessor, if you will, and bring the application of doing individual fee appraisal to mass appraisal concept than it is to hire someone that knows a lot about assessing but very little about commercial valuation. I think there's more exposure to the town there.
Okay, great. Thank you. And just one quick follow-up. I just took a quick look at the potential warrant article list. I saw there's one for the overlay account. Would that be referring to the Macy's defense that David mentioned, or?
It will be, that's not earmarked specifically, but that is certainly a relevant issue that has been on the table before, and I'm sure that's why David mentioned it. It's a placeholder, for what we've all talked about probably on various WebEx calls. Some of us have been on about what does the valuation date of January 1, 21 look like during a pandemic that I don't think any of us were alive to experience one before. The closest thing Burlington has is the infamous perfect storm when you had the situation in the early 2000s when the market fell out and there was a shift potentially in value and things like that. So it's a placeholder. If I could give one little toot of the horn for my tenure here, but largely credited to the Board of Assessors that serves your town for a very modest compensation, is we have had the ability, thank goodness, to have taken a tremendous amount of money out of overlay over the years by, I think we've bought 3 different fire engines for the community and things like that. And in fact, the money last time and this money is being funded out of the overlay. So in essence, this is not a new appropriation. This is arguably money that could have been spent on abatements, given money back for cases. As David mentioned, the board has done a tremendous job over the years, even prior to myself, Russ Washburn, Steve Gasparoni, doing a great job with that. We don't win every case. It's impossible. We try to be reasonable. We try to settle things at home here in Burlington with commercial people, residential people, whoever. Sometimes it doesn't happen. And but long way of saying, I just wanted to compliment the board that I've worked for a while, but also tell you we're funding that money. So it's not going to be something you have to figure out where it's going to fit in your tight budget you're working on this year.
Great. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion for $416,779 for the assessors department.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sonia.
Second?
Thank you, Roger. Brad,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Sonia.
Yes.
Is Tom here? I don't see him. And myself. 1100. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Have a
Next,
good night, y'all.
next is Board of Appeals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Board of Appeals budget every year now is so easy. Town Hall 2 doesn't even bother having a subcommittee meeting on it. It's only a single line item for a recording clerk. It has been level funded for a number of years, as it is this year, in the amount of $13,481. There is no subcommittee vote.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman. Second?
Yeah, I'm just, you said how much, Brad? The scorecard I see is
I'm
13,700.
sorry, 731.
Okay, great.
Pardon me.
Bill, will you amend your motion to 13,731?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Phil. Is there a second?
Second?
Thanks, Roger. With no subcommittee vote, this is going to be hard, but we'll go ahead with it anyway. Brad,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Sonia,
Yes.
and myself. That's 1100. Thank you.
And again, that budget would have been rolled into the other like budgets, but Board of Appeals is its own separate entity. So moving on to the Historical Commission, they are coming in at minus 1.58% this year from last year's budget. They were able to reduce their materials and supplies. Contracted services is also down a bit. There's a little bit to tell about here. Last year, we gave them, let me get the exact number here. We gave them $5,900 for restoration of historic artifacts, but a long desired project came about. The Historical Commission has wanted to clean up and restore the gravestones in the old burial ground. And DPW said they would do it, but Historical said they knew people who could do it, and it was kind of back and forth for some time. And finally, DPW decided they didn't have the technical expertise to do the job. So the Historical Commission decided to hire an expert along those lines, and he actually came in and restored about 30 of the gravestones. So the plan this year is to, for their purposes of contracted services, they intend to use $3,500 to do the second phase of the restoration, which should be, they started with the toughest ones first. The next project should handle more than 30. And then there's a plan to restore 8 historical items. I sent back up, but I see that Joyce Fay has joined us. She can answer questions for specifics as to that. But the plan is to ask for $4,750 for restoration purposes. Other than that, the budget's fairly straightforward. Tom and I voted 2-0 to support.
Thanks, Brad. Joyce, welcome. Would you like to add to what Brad's reported about the Historical Commission?
She's muted, Steve.
Yeah. Let me see if I can unmute her. I can only request it.
So I should do unmute,
can-
right?
We can hear you now. Yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
Welcome, Joe.
Okay. What was the question? I'm sorry.
Would you like to give an introduction to the Historical Commission and add anything to Brad's report about your activities and your budget?
My name is Joyce Fay, and I'm the chairperson of the Historical Commission. We have 7 members and needing a couple more, and can have as many alternates as members. So anybody wants to join, we're always welcome. You're always welcome. We've been with the budget, and as Brad explained, we've had this project of the a restoration of the gravestones at the burial ground. And we hired a professional man, Rob Severian, to do the project. At first, we thought maybe the town would be helping us out on that, but actually, I'm sorry, at first, when we hired him, the town told us that we couldn't do that because the town owned the land and it was up to them. So when we confronted them and they looked into Rob, they thought that he was certainly qualified to do the work. And so as long as we paid the money out of our budget, then they were certainly in favor of us doing all the project. So he's working with Frank Anderson, and has even managed to do some other work in the other cemeteries for Frank. So he certainly is a qualified person. He's done 30 gravestones last fall, and we paid him $3,200. It seems like a lot of money, but it's not just a matter of cleaning them or polishing them. They have to, a lot of them have to be put back the way that they were with cement underneath them. Some of them are broken, and so they are in poor condition. The project is to be done in 3 parts, and the second part will be started this spring, and which we'll pay him the money out of our 2021 budget. And then we're asking for $3,500 in the 2022 budget to pay for the third phase of the project. Okay, I think that's about what I have to say about that. The other restoration articles you have on the list, were there any questions on any of those?
Mr. Chairman?
Phil and then Rob.
Yes, Joyce, I had a question about the West School. What is the status of work on that? It appears to be looking a little shabby.
Yeah. Things always look a little shabby when they're not taken care of all the time. And it was painted a few years ago. We did have some things on the list to be done. I don't know if they've gone forward to do any of those things or not.
Is
Probably
that within the commission's purview, or is that the town's responsibility?
it's the town's responsibility. They own the building.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Joyce. Rob?
I was just curious to see what we're using the Russian musket for, and where do you get one?
The Russian musket.
I don't think it's for sale, Rob.
No,
That's
and
what you're
I already have, I don't have a Russian musket, but I do have a musket.
Okay, you're seeing that on the list? I think it's Prussian, P-R-U-S.
Russian,
Yeah,
sorry.
Civil War musket. It was donated to us, and so many of the items that are donated and that we have, we like to try to have a restoration of them if we can. Maybe that's not a good thing with historical items because maybe it takes away the value, but we do like to show them at the museum. And in fact, I'd like to invite any of you that want to come to the museum. You can do it by on private tours. We are going to be open on May 1st for a Saturday. So that will be a time to come too. Also, and then you can see the cemetery and the stones that they've done. I don't know what a Prussian Civil War musket is, but it was donated to us and it's on the list to be restored for the 2022. So,
Great.
and it would only be for show. We're certainly not using
Too bad.
it.
And we didn't see any training for it in the budget, so
Any training? No, I don't think so. I don't think there'd be anybody in town that could probably want to use that.
Mike, you had a question.
Thank you.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Joyce, I was just wondering if people wanted to visit the burial ground, are there certain hours to do that?
No, it's open all the time. It's open, there's never, there's no gate on it or anything, so it's open. You can go in anytime. We do have a list of all the people that are buried there at the museum, so that's always a nice thing to go by, because then if you can find the graves, and that's one of the things that we do with the third graders when they have had their chance to come to see the, all the historical places. Even though with the COVID, we haven't been able to do that, but the burial ground is a great thing for them, because they have a little game that Sandy gives them a list of all the different people, and they have to find them, and all the questions that she has with it. So they like that part of the tour.
Oh, okay, great. And what was happening on May 1st? Is there some type of?
We're having we're having the museum open, we hope, unless things change with the COVID restrictions. We think that we can open up the museum as long as we keep, so many people in the masks and all that. So it would be May 1st, and it'd probably be 10 o'clock to 2 or 3 in the afternoon. There'll be some information in the paper probably about it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And you also can, if anybody wants a private tour, any members of the commission would be happy to take you through.
Great.
Thank you. How has been attendance at the museum during the COVID time? Have you
And we
been-
haven't had any attendance,
Okay.
only, we've had a few things in the paper for private tours, and I've had a few people call up and want to see it, but for the most part, we haven't been able to do the kids from school from, well, last spring, last fall, and now into the spring again, so it's too bad, because all those third graders have lost out. We thought we would be able to do something virtually with them and with the school that, the teachers in the third grade, but it didn't work out that way.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to mention, I think, Joyce, it's $100 to be a lifetime member of the Historical Society.
It is $100 for a lifetime member, but the yearly dues are $15 a person and $20 for a family.
Thank you.
We because we haven't had any meetings for the Historical Society, we're not gonna, we won't be accepting their dues for 2021. We haven't had any meetings at all for last year or even for now this year, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Phil. Any further questions? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion for the Historical Commission in the dollar amount of $9,625.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sonia.
Second.
Thank you, Brad. I'm sorry, did I get the wrong person?
It's all right. We look alike.
Okay. I was doing it by sound. I got to get my headphones off. Brad,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Sonia,
Yes.
and chair votes aye, 11-0-0.
A lot of us look alike, John.
Thank you, Joy.
We can only aspire, Phil.
We look forward to the the grand reopening of the Historical Commission.
Yeah, I'd hope to see some of you there. That would be nice.
I know
Thank you.
I know I go by that cemetery by the Historical Commission a lot, but I have not really stopped to take a look.
Right,
I
yeah.
live across the street from another cemetery, and you can find some very interesting things in the cemetery. So
Yeah.
it's a crazy place. But anyways, thank
And
you
we
very
have a lot of our items that we've been restoring for the last few years, in the museum that have come out nicely. And so it would be nice for you to be able to see that where, where the money has been spent.
Will do. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Good night. So
Okay. So-
next up is the Department of Public Works, the operating budget side of it.
I guess I can go.
Doug.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Sonia and I met with John Sanchez and Rachel Leonardo on Monday and went over the budget, kind of hit the high points, and then John is here. John and Rachel are here for questions. So we have an overall increase of 2.61%. 2.83% of that's operating and 1.79% increase in the accommodated. It is primarily being driven by salary increases and also fairly significant increases in pretty much all forms of waste, trash, rubbish removal. That's getting more and more expensive, and we're starting to see that. The contracted services line is up 9.56% as a result of starting to purchase water from the MWRA through the new Adams Street connection. We started buying water in January in order to complete the work that we approved last year on the mill, or 2 years ago on the Mill Pond plant, the automated sedimentation removal system. And John says that's working well, and they're very pleased with the way it's working. It will keep us from having to shut down the plant in the middle of the summer to do a clean out. So that should help with our volume of water that we're able to make through that plant. Well cleaning and sludge removal is up almost 23%, again, primarily due to the disposal side. We've gone from $62 a ton, which is what we currently pay, and the estimate is going to be $90 per ton next year to dispose of the sludge. Rubbish and garbage is also up for the same reason. The tipping fee has gone up significantly. John explained, and I think he'll maybe talk a little bit now or when I finish, and then hopefully to town meeting also. Just a warning that we've got to be aware of some significant increases in these.
Doug, you broke up right after there's a warning, and we didn't hear the warning part of it.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
That's a perfect time to break up. Everybody's paying. I could see who was on the edge of their seat. Some people started to lean forward. All right. So our warning is that we've got 2 years left on a 5-year contract. And I remember when we did the new 5-year contract, we were, John had to explain that the previous 5-year contract had been really good. And this one was not, we were going to see some increases. And now we have that same warning. We're not going to get some of the favorable conditions that we've had in this contract. And I'll let him go into the details, but some of it is we're going to be responsible for finding the people to take our recyclables as opposed to that being built into the Republic contract. Just a heads up there that we're going to need to spend some money, and it's going to cost more in the future. As we went through, then warrant article projects from previous years are on schedule or have been completed. MWRA phase 1 is, as I just said, is completed, and we're using it and drawing water from it. Phase 2 is underway. The DPW rec building is almost complete. If you get a chance to drive by and look at it, it's beautiful from the outside. I haven't been in, but I hear it's very nice on the inside, and it's something to be very proud of. And so that should be opening hopefully in June. And then phase 2 of that project, which will be replacement of the highway department facility, will begin immediately as soon as we can get them moved out. The closure of the library due to COVID gave the DPW some chance and access to the building to get quite a bit done. And most of that was in energy savings. They did change out the HVAC units on the roof, which was something we had funded last year. And they did a lot of control work on controls and wiring on the inside of the building. And that was it was actually helpful that the library was closed during that time. On the good news front, it's something to be excited about and proud of. Rachel Leonardo and the rest of the staff found quite a few grants and really worked hard to access some programs so that they could do some mainly energy efficiency upgrades, primarily LED lighting upgrades throughout the town buildings. So they were able to do about $1 million worth of upgrades, and the town spent $153,000 for that. And they're already seeing significant decreases in energy costs because of it. So we're saving money now because of those changes. Subcommittee voted to approve 2-0, and John and Rachel are here for your questions.
Thank you, Doug. John, welcome. Rachel, welcome. I'm also happy to see the sidewalk construction starting on the end of Terrace Hall. It's certainly adding a little more excitement to, my morning route sometimes, but it will be nice when it's finished. So thank you very much. Would you like to add any additional comments on top of what
I
Doug?
thought I was. Oh, maybe it went off.
Okay, so, all right, I don't hear, so John Sanchez here. So I just want to add a little bit to what we just heard regarding the trash contract in a couple of years ago, and it's all related to the recycling, and you've probably read over the last year how recycling costs have gone through the roof. Thankfully, since we had a contract already in place, it hasn't really affected us that much to begin with. But once that contract is up in 2 years, we are going to be responsible for those costs. Right now, they're ranging at $100 per ton, versus just disposing of trash. We're currently paying like 75. It's going to go to 90, but it's becoming really, really expensive. So this is something to look and get ready for 2023, which will be FY 2024. Other than that, the budget this year, we tried to do as much as we could to reduce the impacts of the budget due to the cuts that we're proposing, or the level funding, if you would. So for the most part, it's similar to what you've seen in years past. From here to answer any questions, and so is Rachel as well.
Thanks, John. Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, John. Not a very popular question, but if $100 a ton for recycling and $72 a ton for tipping fee at the incinerator, doesn't it make sense for us to re-enter the recyclables into the trash stream?
If that was allowed by the state, yes, it's mandated that we have to recycle. But you're correct. It makes you want to not do it, but we're mandated to do it.
Okay, and secondly, solar panels seem to be the rage all over town. Are there opportunities for the town in this area?
So we looked a few years ago, Phil, on the buildings we had, and some of the schools were able to take advantage of it because of the size of the roofs. I will tell you that all the rest of the buildings that we had at the time, we were too small to work. However, both the new facility that we're building at 10 Great Meadow and the one at 1 Great Meadow that Doc just talked about are designed in such a way that we could add solar panels in the future. So we did take that loading into account. So if it will be feasible, at least we know that the roof will support it.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to add to that because I walked by the Mill Pond Reservoir and noticed that on Sunday that the sun was beaming brightly onto the roof of the facility there, the water treatment facility. Is that roof not support solar there?
No, at the time when we looked at them, Steve, is that the area was not large enough
Okay,
for it to make, and perhaps, we have to do another round of looking at buildings to see if prices have come down and for them to be effective. But the last time we looked at them, which is no more than a couple of years ago, they were not feasible.
okay, thanks. Any other questions, John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, John. Had a few questions, please. The first one was with the Eversources granting us a little over $500,000. Uh, are there any strings attached to that, so to speak, or is that just to be used for energy conservation measures? Or
So, well, we have to buy the distribution from them. I mean, this is we can't go to another competitor. That's who brings it here. But no, all these utilities, whether it's Engrid or Eversource, they collect all these funds from our electric bills. I mean, you see there's a little percentage there that we're all paying in every electric bill towards energy saving. And then what we're doing is they're taking advantage of those funds that they have to give them back to either residents. I mean, some people take advantage of it at home, or businesses, or the towns. Now I'll say through Drescher's efforts, we're able to actually get that work done for zero. I'm going to call it copay, if you want to call it. Typically, you have to pay a certain percentage. And originally, we thought that we were going to end up having to pay for it. And she worked hard at this with one of the vendors, and we were able to actually get it approved at zero cost to the town. But there's nothing is done, is ours, is paid for. Pretty much, we're all set.
love the price. And then for full-time salaries, I just want to make sure I understood that. If I, look at a couple full-time salary lines, like on page 18 and page 26 of the PDF, the increases are like 6 to 8%. And I was just curious, is that because or why is that? It seems much larger than the typical, 2.5 or so that we see most places.
Yes, so depending on what you're looking at, you will have individuals who are both getting the whatever 2.5% increase plus a step. So as we've been hiring younger employees, those will keep on stepping every year, and those steps typically are about 4% year to year. So you'll have the 4% increase plus the 2.5 on top of that. So depending on how many of those we have in a particular department, you're going to see a larger increase.
Okay, so the full-time line items that have the big increases just happen to have a lot of step increases included with it. It's not, from your hiring, I see there's no hiring going on, so that's not the reason. Okay,
No.
I just want to make sure there wasn't some unusual big contract bump up that I hadn't seen.
If I
And
can
then-
actually add to that real quick.
Sure.
The DPW has a lot of employees that are at the top step, and going into January of 2022, they're actually creating another step in a few of the unions. So all those top steppers are doing exactly what John just said, where they're getting even more. So if you can imagine, they're at the very, very top getting the most of their step, and they're getting more. So that's what's really setting us up above.
Okay, it was that new step that got added recently. All right.
Yes.
And then I was curious, I was trying to make sense of some of the costs and understand how that applies to Vinebrook and so on. What is the status of Vinebrook? Is it online, partially online, totally offline, or where are we?
So the treatment plant, I mean, it so happened that just like last month was offline because we were doing work with the wells, but it's back online. I mean, it was down for maintenance, and it will continue to be online through 2022. And our goal is by 2023, that's when we're going to start taking it offline once that we have the new connection with the MWRA. But yeah, the plant, obviously the production out of the plant is not what it used to be. We're producing about half the water we used to. I mean, we all know why, but it is online.
Okay, so that explains why there's some costs for cleaning the wells and pump repair, but the supply costs are down because our volume is down. Is that the right way to look at it?
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Any further questions? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion for the operating budget, and that operating budget total is $9,962,947.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, Brad,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Rob.
Yes.
Was that a yes, Rob? Okay. Roger,
Yes.
Sonia,
Yes.
and myself, that's 11-0. Thank you. So now that we have 3 accommodated accounts, first we'll do trash removal. And that the trash removal amount is $2,244,200.
So moved.
Thank you, Roger. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sonia. Any further discussion? Brad,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Sonia,
Yes.
and then myself, 11-0. Next is the streetlights, and that's $370,500. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Roger. Second.
Second.
Thanks, John. Seeing no discussion, Brad,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Tanya,
Yes.
and myself, 11-0. And then finally, for DPW, the drinking water assessment, that's $15,000.
So moved.
Thank you, Roger.
Second.
Thank you, John. Brad,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Yes. Was that Kelly?
yes, Kelly,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Rob, or sorry, Phil,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Sonia,
Yes.
and myself. That's 11-0. And I think that wraps up DPW.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, you may, Roger.
I'll repeat it this year. I think I said ask it last year. On the Public Works summary page, the 3 items that we just voted on that are accommodated accounts, in the table, there's no, indication, star, dagger, anything to highlight that they are accommodated accounts. They're not next to each other, and yet they're totaled on a line below. So it would be really nice if it was organized to easily recognize those and the subtotal for the accommodated accounts for next year.
So noted. And that wraps up the budgets that we had planned for tonight. So now, thank you, John. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night. So now what's up is the discussion around the proposal for new positions and how we want to go about doing that. I'll let Mike start.
Thanks, Steve. So we kind of talked about this last week. I guess we'll discuss it this week because it's actually on the agenda. The idea is that, occasionally, periodically, we get requests for new positions from different departments. And some of those departments are under the town administrator, and the administration has their own kind of process, I think, for vetting those. And then other times they come from other departments that aren't under town administration, so they're kind of independent of that. And my feeling over the last several seasons or years or requests has been that the kind of the information that we get as to why the position is needed, or as John Eiler mentioned, even a description of the position itself is, the information we get and the amount of information we get and the format kind of is varying. And I think it's because it's generally left up to the requesting department to figure out, what to ask, what to put in their request. I think we could help them more and maybe be able to do a better job understanding these requests if we put some thought into some of the types of data that we think would be helpful for us to understand the need for those positions, and we can maybe get more consistency there and maybe have a little bit better process on our end. I feel like sometimes the request comes in and it's if I wasn't paying enough attention, it's the first time I'm seeing it, I'm like, oh, they're asking for a new position, which to be honest is kind of a big deal, because our expenses in the town are 90+% based on salary and so forth. And once the positions are filled, our hands are our ability to influence anything is very limited. Most of it's contractual and so forth. So I just feel like with maybe putting some heads together and thinking about this, and maybe even working with Paul or whoever makes sense on the town side, we could come up with something that would be a better process. So that was the discussion.
Bill.
The problem I see initially is that these boards have independent authority through the bylaws. So I would think we would need to examine a bylaw change that would interject a review and selection process with the boards and perhaps the personnel department, in which a recommendation comes forward jointly from the board and administration or personnel or what have you, so that we do have both a standardized review process and a standardized hiring process. And I think that would take a little bit of bylaw weight in order to accomplish that. So I think, Mr. Chairman, perhaps if you appointed a subcommittee that could meet with Paul and John and perhaps establish some parameters in which this might be done.
I certainly think that a subcommittee is the right approach, because I think a couple of folks should really go through and flesh out the ideas behind that. And also thinking through the school committee side and the more latitude they have, at least in terms of their operating budget, it's clear that there's probably some considerations on that side we have to take into account to make this proposal work. Roger.
So I guess a couple of comments. I don't think I've ever been surprised by a request for new staff. Most of the departments have been very good about telegraphing the fact that they're understaffed and they need new staff to cover operational things. So that's one point. Another is that perhaps some of the thing could be done less formally, just by asking the HR department, which is consulted, I think, for all the hires, that they have a consistent form of a request for new standards, for new people. Certainly within our Ways and Means own domain, we could create a form or ask for the information to be presented to us in a more regular form. I think certainly that's within our domain without, reaching too far, and yet we might still get the result that we're looking for. But I would, I think if we do need to sort of request the administration or the different departments to do something different, a subcommittee of Ways and Means to try to figure that out would be a good idea.
John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Roger, I agree with you. I don't think we need to go to root of worrying about bylaws and so on. I was imagining that we'd end up with something similar to what we have for warrant articles and so on. I know Paul loves to have additional forms, so we're just helping him out here. I think if we kept a relatively simple list of things that I would think people would generally agree to, we could get buy-in without having to codify it into a bylaw. I think something with here's the typical kind of backup we're looking for. Who will the person report to? What's the annualized cost? The job description. If there is a separate supervisory board, what's their vote in terms of wanting this position? I think it's a few basic things that presumably wouldn't be objectionable. As you say, it's probably worthwhile to make sure that the subcommittee talks with HR. The schools is one of the big hiring, obviously, and the administration, of course. Thank you.
Yep, Roger.
Just one other comment, that schools, like several of the other boards, they do have independent authority. And so they hire people on and off all year. It isn't just, something that happens once a year and they can plan ahead. There's, quite a bit of turnover at the schools. And as we saw in the diversity position that got created, quite a lot of that took a while to come into place because there was such a broad discussion of, well, what's the job and job description and who does what. And that kind of community discussion in that case was very valuable, but it took a while. They weren't going to get to the point where they could fill out a form until it was quite late in the process. And it was also driven by a deadline with town meeting. They needed to get something done.
You're absolutely right. The schools are really a separate category.
And I think from the perspective of the form we're trying to fill out, we're not necessarily worried about replacement in existing positions, but really the creation of new positions. If my understanding is correct. Phil. You're muted, which is the best. Oh, sorry, I'm live on television.
I would use the diversity position as an example of exactly what we need to avoid in the future without a more formal hiring process. I mean, to think that town meeting is going to be adding willy-nilly whatever positions they want here and there kind of obviates the need for management. So, my 2 cents on that subject.
Thanks, Phil. Roger, do you have anything to add? You look like you did, but I'm not sure.
Well, I guess I would probably needlessly point out that town meeting is the legislative body and they sort of trump anything else. I mean, we can try to guide them to the right choices. And in fact, the role of Ways and Means is to, give feedback from the community and to present our opinion to town meeting. So there's some mix in here that I think could probably help understanding communication.
Thanks, Roger. So go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so to kind of piggyback on what Roger said, if we can get more information from the requesting departments, and I don't mean to imply that the needs aren't there. I've felt in the past that I've had to infer and deduce from conversations that need, and I felt like it's there. I'm hearing a little bit about it, but I'm not hearing, a more, expressive description of this, position is needed because of X and Y. You kind of got to connect the dots yourself. But if we can get that information, that can go forward to town meetings so they have a better understanding and better information for their deliberation.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
So my thinking is that forming a subcommittee makes sense. The question is just for me from a logistical perspective, do we want to vote to create the committee tonight and then we'll request people send me emails to volunteer, or would you do we know we have some volunteers who would like to jump in now and we can form the committee at this spot? Roger.
I think the chair can, on its own authority, create an ad hoc committee and do whatever it wants.
Exactly.
And then I will take that, and
Run with it.
I will run with it. Yes, I will form a committee.
And
Thank
ask
you.
for volunteers, right?
I will volunteer some folks. Any further discussion? No. I do not have, is there any other budget matters to bring up tonight? I'm looking through the list and I see at least a couple of items that still need to be addressed. It may not be the full list, but obviously next week we have all the schools, both the regional school assessments with Minutemen, Essex, and Shawsheen. And so we'll see at least the superintendent of Shawsheen. And also we have the Burlington Public Schools plus the accommodated accounts for special education. And then next week, we also have the revolving account review, and John has promised to send me the list of revolving accounts at least a few days before that takes place. So hopefully I'll be able to send it out no later than Monday to give the committee some time to review. I'll just speak with Whitney later this week to just go over and make sure we've got everything else covered. The two things that are jumping out in my mind that I don't think we've talked about, and I'm not sure the numbers are yet finalized, is debt principal and debt interest. So we'll need to take care of those. But I think just looking quickly, I think mostly everything else is set. I will double check this over the weekend and just make sure.
Negotiated settlement. I'm sorry, Steve. Negotiated settlements.
Okay, negotiated settlements. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so those three are outstanding and those are all town hall 1. So we'll get those after schools. The warrant article list, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be finalized by the Board of Selectmen at Monday's meeting. So we'll hear back from John regarding that, and I'll just make sure I have the subcommittees assigned to all of these and look to see if this is something that we can take care of. I'm trying to figure out whether we'll be meeting the week of April vacation or not, and how much time we have left between that and the start of the annual town meeting. But it looks like we're starting to get into good shape and starting to wrap up the budget process. Roger.
So I guess just one where I would use slightly different wording. The selectmen vote on the warrant articles. And so as does Ways and Means, and they're sort of equivalent. I don't know that the selectmen finalize the list. I think actually the administration finalizes the list. So it's nice to vote after the selectmen because then we know what they've done.
Right.
Separately, I'll send around email with links to the school budgets in Shawsheen for people to peruse. They're already on the Burlington Public Schools Budget and Finances page, or at least the Burlington one, and I'll get the Shawsheen one posted as well.
And from the warrant article perspective, Whitney has indicated that she will put the backup material starting tomorrow and be done by the end of the week. So that will be also under the financial section of our website. I know you guys are looking forward to minutes, but I'm still trying to get a hold of our minute keeper. I haven't heard from her this week, so I need to figure out what happened to her. So we'll get to those next week.
Is it time, Phil?
I think so. It's your move. I'll second you, Roger. Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Phil.
Second.
Thank you, Roger. Let me run down the list of everybody's names and make sure they all agree. We're adjourned. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
All right.